Hi again then guys, and welcome to the 104th episode of B-Road Ballers, returning once again to the world of Gran Turismo 2 for this particular review, and once again it is a two-part review in effect for both the standard form of the Citroen Saxo, which is the car in question, and also the race modify version of that car, which actually turns it into the F2 Rally spec Citroen Saxo. So we'll discuss obviously the differences between the two, but also the car as a whole. How does it compare to the other hatches on Gran Turismo 2, and also how does it compare to the hatches which we have now on Gran Turismo 5, Gran Turismo 6, and potentially even Gran Turismo Sport? Well, I must say that the Citroen Saxo, although not being a car that I absolutely love, is my personal preferred of the two French hot hatches of choice for boy racers. It's arguably between the Citroen Saxo and the Peugeot 106 in particular. I've personally never liked the Peugeot 106 that much, whereas I actually do quite like the Saxo. The VTS and the VTR are, I personally think, quite nice looking cars. They're pretty quick as well, and this version has not necessarily incredible tuning potential, but definitely more than enough potential to make it a useful car, or at least it could be. Now, for the reasonably modest price of 21,000 credits, or a fraction over, you get a 1.6 litre naturally aspirated engine. Of course it's front mounted, it's also front wheel drive as you'd assume, and even with the race modify conversion it remains front wheel drive. Of course it's an F2 car. Now, as far as fully tuned numbers, you're looking at 264 horsepower, which is decent enough, 197 foot-pounds of torque, which is okay. That's not too bad. That's comparable to something like an Integra Type R, for instance, when tuned up, or a Civic Type R, and it only weighs 860 kilos with the full weight loss package. Now, of course, the race modify version is slightly different, and we'll get into that more in just a second, but for now, that's a pretty good overall spec for this car to have. Because, of course, at the end of the day, the Citroen Saxo, like the Peugeot 106, is not a big hot hatch. It's not something which is going to take on a Focus RS anytime soon, but what it can take on is plenty of lower level hatches, stuff like Corsas, 106s, maybe even a little bit higher to stuff like Peugeot 206s if necessary, but not really above that. But that's in real life. On the game, it can sometimes be different, because certain hatches can definitely punch well above their weight, and I would say that on this occasion the Saxo is one that kind of can. It doesn't have a ridiculous amount of power, but it's light enough to be very impressive around corners, and although in fully tuned form in particular, you do get quite a lot of vibrational feedback through the controller because of the power going through that front wheel drive chassis and the diff and the way the car handles itself, and that is something that's ever present. It's not a bad handling car at all though. You can throw it through the corners, and that is mainly down to the front wheel drive advantage, of course, and it's a joy to drive. It's very fun, it feels very confident in itself, very playful, which is what you'd assume the car would be like, but also very quick. It feels very competitive. Now, in the grand scheme of career mode, I must admit I haven't used this car that much. I tend to stick to about 5 or 6 cars to do the whole career mode, because you can actually do that if you want to, so I haven't had, strictly speaking, the need to use this car. But I will say that even in this, in effect, normal form, it still feels fantastic. It's fun, it's fast, it feels competitive, and although I haven't used it that much, as I said, it definitely feels like it has the potential for those who are a fan of the car to get a good amount of use out of it. Of course, you don't necessarily have to tune it up the whole way. You can use it for lower end career mode races if you want to. Now, as far as the racing version goes, the F2 class kit car conversion with the price of 80,000 credits, which is very hefty, but then again it is to any car that you do that to. Now, with that conversion, not only does the car look significantly more impressive as a motorsport machine, but it does have, I would say, 3 distinct advantages. One is fairly obvious, and that is the lower weight. This upgrade drops the weight from 860 kilos to 834, so there's not a massive improvement, but there is an improvement nonetheless. The second advantage, I would say, is the track, and that is to say the width between the the wheels. So the car itself has that wide arch body kit which allows the wheels to be spaced wider, and also the car feels like it has a lower centre of gravity as another advantage of that, and that definitely improves its cornering ability. It doesn't sway around as much. Of course you could stiffen up the springs on the normal version anyway, but having that wider track makes it feel so much more purposeful through the corners, and of course just helps with stability in general. And the third advantage, and this is another fairly obvious one, is downforce. On the normal road-going version, you don't have that option. You can't adjust the downforce, whereas on this one, you can. It's not necessarily quicker in a straight line than the normal version already is, but that pretty much goes without saying. It's not designed for that. Overall, it's a car which I wouldn't recommend to everyone as an essential purchase, because it's quite simply not an essential purchase. You can get hatches which can go quicker for slightly less money, or have better tuning potential in terms of power or straight line performance, so it's not an absolute must buy or a top 5 vehicle, but it's a very good one. And if you are a fan of the Saxo, or want to go back to Gran Turismo's past to experience a car which strangely has never been featured since, even though the Peugeot 106 has, which seems kind of unfair, then I would recommend checking this one out. It is a hot hatch highlight, I would say, from Gran Turismo 2, and a car which I personally would actually really like to see return. But that's it for this pick overall. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.